Okay. So this is my presentation. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Luke Scorcio. I'm one of the Plone people here at UW Oshkosh. And I'm really not your typical Plone person, because I'm not a computer person at all. I went to school here for theater, graduated a year ago, and somehow ended up doing computer things. In theater school, we don't do the computer school things. I'll show you a couple of pictures of me just to give you an idea of what that is like. This is part one. That's me in one of my stellar performances. That's me wearing lederhosen, which you probably don't do in computer science school. That's actually not me acting. That dude's a Drupal dude. And I was just showing him. Okay, so that's theater school in a nutshell. I've done theater for years since I was in high school. Well, even before that, since I was like 12. I've been doing theater for years. And I do improv comedy. I've been doing that for a year. I've taken classes, and I teach classes and stuff. And so I thought, why not relate Plone to improv a little bit and relate Plone to theater? And I think one of the most important ways that I can do that is I've done a lot of Shakespearean acting. Shakespearean plays are so beautiful in the language, such well-constructed stories, so I thought, why not take Shakespeare and Plone and put them together? So I've got a couple of monologues here that I'd like to do for you. And you can go simple things like, to Plone or not to Plone, that is the question. That's very, very simple Shakespeare. But then you've got plays like the Scottish play Macbeth, story of a tragic anti-hero and his demise. And there's a very famous scene in that when he is first deciding to commit murder. But I've revised it a little bit for you, and it's something like this. Is this the Plone I see before me? The CMS towards my hand? Come, let me run build out on thee. I run thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not fatal website? Good for user and for programmer? Or art thou but a CMS of the mind from the Drupal-infected mind? That's the Scottish play. But you've got also beautiful plays which are less. Macbeth is a hard play, a lot of violence in it, but you also have beautiful plays like Romeo and Juliet, and the famous balcony scene. And I'll just do a little bit of that for you now. But soft, what light through yonder Plone breaks? It is the Plone, and Juliet is the Plone. Arise, fair Plone, and slay the envious Drupal, for thou, her sister, art far more fair than Plone. That one I wrote late at night, so mostly just threw Plone in various places. So you can see how well it goes when I put Plone in theater. But that's that. I'm going to go back to the beginning and talk about how I got involved in Plone, where I started from, and then some of the things I've done, talk a little bit about that. And I think that I have a fairly unique perspective on it because I'm coming at it from starting from a completely non-technical place. My brother was the computer guy. Both my brothers, one of them was a hardware guy, the other guy was a software guy. I did important things like play Commander Keen and Weltris and Chex Quest. The main thing I knew about computers growing up was I saw this a lot and had to restart. So basically, that was my background with computers. I played games, I knew how to restart it, I knew how to turn it on, that's it. And that's basically me through high school, through beginning of college, because I didn't have to know anything. Because my brothers knew everything, and they were the computer guys, and I was not the computer guy. Now, the main thing that I've noticed about people, That's basically the two categories. There's the people who know computers, and we think they know everything about computers. And if he knows how to do a website, he must be able to help me when my computer shuts down. Oh, you did a website? You could fix my computer. Because to non-computer people, computers are magic. And everything about it is magic, and the programmers are the magicians. So you see people freaking out about, whoa, how'd you pull that rabbit out of the hat, you know? It's the same thing as, whoa, my Wi-Fi works now. How'd you do it? I clicked it, and then you did, and it works now, that's amazing. That's the way that people react to it. But the difference between magicians and programmers is magicians never reveal their secrets. Right? So the magician goes, you're like, oh, there's a rabbit out of the hat, and then there's fire, and then we're like, how do you do that? And they're like, oh, I'm not going to tell you. More fire and glitter, right? But the programmer, you're like, how did you get my Wi-Fi to work? And the programmer's like, well, it's easy. You know, you just click in the corner. Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can figure it out. It's actually really easy. You can just click up there, just right-click, and then, no, I think I'll just ask you next time, you know, when you can come over and fix it for me, because it seems too hard. Because all computer thinks it's all magic, and for some reason people don't want to know. And I think it's because once you know, then you have to know everything about computers, because when you know something, everybody's going to start to ask you questions. So you let the computer people do their thing, and you do your thing. So that was me. Growing up, I didn't do any computer things because there was other people to do it for me. So then I made it to college. There's part 2. And at this point, I met Kim Nguyen because my brother went to school here and he did a bunch of cool things with Plone. That's kind of where he got started. And then my brother was getting married and I met Kim and we started talking about things and I asked him a question about something on the theater website. And he asked me how I compared with Marshall. Because everybody compares brothers, and we all compare ourselves to each other. And so when he asked me that, I did the natural thing, and I said, I'm everything Marshall is and more. And so, but I did end up telling him, I said, look, but not with computers. He's a genius or something, I don't know. But I don't know anything about computers. I'm not a computer guy, you know. I don't want to know the magic. So Kim he wanted to hire someone who didn't know anything about computers, who could help him with the intranet project. Because he wanted non-technical people to be able to learn how to use Plone Forms, Plone Form Gen, and the workflow manager, and be able to use those, and with the D2C made by Nathan Van Giem, he wanted to be able to use that to make forms for each department. So he hired me to come in, learn a couple of things, and then be able to go off and teach other people. So that's what happened. And I'd worked at Culver's for 5 years. I wanted to get out of Culver's, and this seems like a good plan at the time. So I come over, and I make a couple of forms. I made this form, which was basically a ripoff of Salesforce, where I could put in leads, people in departments I wanted to talk to, and then I made a workflow, which was somewhat complicated, and I could mark in when I contacted people, whether they were interested or not interested, what I had to do in the future. But it was all very simple, and that's what I did for a while. I knew the very, very basics of Plone, and I would go around and teach people in the departments that needed to know the very basics. And because I understood it at a basic level, I could teach it at a basic level. And the best way to describe how that would go is, have you ever seen the organ grinder with the monkey, right? And he's playing the accordion, but then the monkey is dressed up in a little suit with a little hat. And he'll do people things, right? He'll go over and shake hands, and you're like, that's crazy that the monkey can shake hands. Or he'll go take the cup around for money. That was me and Kim. Kim would go up and be like, oh, you want to see what a theater person could do? Check this out. Hey, Luke, come here and do the forms. And I'd be like, you want to see a form? Okay. You just go like this, and then I drag and drop, and there's the form. And it was like, if we can teach an arts person to do that, think of what we can do. And so that was me for a while. I went around and I did stuff. I learned the very basics, and I didn't want to know more than that. And I'd go to Kim or John, and I'd say, hey, can you help me with this thing? I'm having this problem. And they'd fix it for me, and I'd say, that's cool. And they'd say, it's really easy. If you want to fix it, you just go in and right-click. And I'd go, no, I'll just ask you next time. That's okay. I'll come back to you. And that's what I did. And that went on because I didn't have to be a computer guy. I could still be a non-computer guy for a while. And then something else changed. I was hoping that I could keep doing that same thing for another year because I wanted to make some money before I go off and do something else. So I talked to Kim. He was hoping to be able to hire me, and then there wasn't enough funding. There wasn't funding to bring me on. So Kim was nice enough to go out and get me a job in a specific department. And I got a job working in international education, doing some forms for them. The good thing about that is I now had a job. The bad thing is that then I actually had to know something because I couldn't just rely on Kim and John for things because people would come to me with their problems. And then I had to be the computer guy, which I wasn't used to doing. So that was kind of crazy for a while, and there was a couple of months of, I'm just going to pretend that I know how to do this, and I'll just do some things. Does this work? But I actually got some things done in that time. And at this point, I'm going to bring in some of the rules of improv, because this is about improvised Plone. So the first rule of improv is that you need to always say yes and always say and. In improv, this means that if I go over and we're acting out a scene, we're imagining objects and things, if I go over and say, oh, hey, look at this boulder I found. If the other guy in the scene goes, it's not a boulder, that's your mom's head. It's kind of funny, but then we have no idea what that is. Is that a boulder? Is that somebody's head? Who knows? So that's what happens in improv. What I found out is computer people do the same thing. If I go to somebody with a problem, they say, I'm like, hey, do you know how to fix this? They say, yes, I know how to fix that. And I'm going to look up how to fix that for you. And so after that happened a bunch of times, I'm like, it's almost like they don't know, and they just look it up every time. Okay, and then I started to do that at my job. My boss would be like, can you do this? Yes, I can do that. I'll go figure out how to do that for you. And so I did that, and I ended up actually making some interesting things. There was this application which was made, I believe Nathan had a large part in this. It's the OIE student application made a long time ago in Plone, but they wanted to do some different things with it. They wanted that to be able to, they wanted another form that could pull data from this and then be submitted to somebody else. And so I was like, okay, I can do that for you. And then I went and asked Kim, how can I do this? And what I ended up doing is I made this other form here, and then I went to somebody else and got a little bit of advice from them, and they gave me some code, and I was able to pull certain fields from the one form into the new form on the new site, which is using the D2C and Plone form gen, and then use a custom workflow to send that to different people. And the code that I made, which was David gave me a couple things, and then I kind of figured it out. I'm going to show you really quick because I don't want anybody to analyze it. But it's that. It looks kind of impressive for a theater person. So that's what I did. I ended up going around, and there was a couple of forms that I was able to make, and things went pretty well for a while. And that was cool. The problem with that is that then I got another job. After that was a contract that ended after 6 months, and then I got another job. And one of the problems with this is that there's a certain level of showmanship that I've learned from improv. And once you've done one thing, you have to be able to do something else too. So if I made some cool forms in OIE, now I have to make even cooler forms over in the Office of Grants, which sucks because then I have to know even more things. But this is where another of the rules of improv comes in. Taking risks. Because in improv, you always have to take risks, and you're going to end up with, as I've found, you need to make a joke, and there are no funny jokes going on in your head. But you have to say something anyway, and it sucks, and sometimes it ends up being a really funny joke. An example of me taking a risk one time, it was a game where we had to do pickup lines that a nerd would say. That was the category. And so everybody before me is going out and they're doing like funny World of Warcraft references and like there's Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm like, I work with nerds all the time, I should know this. So finally I get up there and it's my turn and I'm like, my pickup line is, hey, you like CMSs? Because I've got some content and I'd like to manage your system. And this just went over way better here than it did there, let me tell you. There wasn't even a groan. I would have settled for a groan on that one. But there was nothing. And I found that with programming, there's the same thing, basically. I'm like, here's a little bit of JavaScript that I kind of understand. And I'm pretty sure that this isn't going to work. But I'm going to try it anyway, and we'll see what happens. And on doing that a couple of times, I started to kind of learn how JavaScript works. And I guess this is kind of how CSS works. And by taking more and more risks and taking code and saying, look, I understand that line, that might work, okay, I started to learn a little bit about how to actually do some custom things. And a couple of things that I've done just recently, this is something that Brian was just helping me finish this up with something, and Nathan had a part in this. This is an approval letter in the Office of Grants, and the underlined lines up there are fields. It's data from a field which is stored in a save data to content adapter, and they can automatically generate this approval letter, and it works, and they can save it as a PDF. And I did that by going, I have this code that I think will work, because it worked in a different thing. So let's paste it here and see what happens. And I took a couple of risks and ended up paying off. Another situation, I won't show you that too long because you'll start making fun of it. It's a little bit of Python that goes and it takes a workflow transition, and on that transition, it takes an email address field, looks up the user name, and then assigns a local role to that user so that you can transition an object and then have somebody assigned as a reviewer on that object based on an email field. Which it's like crazy that I'm even saying that now, because a year ago I was like, Python? The snake? But it works and it's cool. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I know things, but I don't know a lot of things. But if I'm willing to take risks and stuff like that, it seems to work out. The last rule of improv is to have fun. I haven't figured out how to apply that yet, but I'm thinking I'm going to one of these days. One of these days I'll figure that out. Okay, so this is kind of where I'm at right now. I know some things now. I know some CSS, I know some JavaScript, I know a little bit of Python, I know some HTML, but I'm still like grasping at straws whenever I'm doing anything, which is interesting. And I've been trying to figure out, okay, if I can do this, how could I help other people who are completely non-technical people learn that they'd be able to do these things too? What is it that changed for me? Because I work with people like that all the time. Just try this thing, and they won't try it. There's no way that they're ever going to try this new thing, and I'm still not quite sure, but I know that the turning point for me was when I took some risks and things paid off. Like I know there was a time when I had some collections that were showing objects that had been deleted. And I was trying to figure it out forever. Did I make a copy of that? Why is this object showing up? Because I click on it, it says item not found. And eventually I was just looking around in the ZMI. And I go into Portal Catalog, I'm like, that looks right. And then there's advanced options, and update catalog. That might work. Like, it looks kind of like it could work. I'll click the button. And it worked. And I was like, whoa, I just solved my problem. And I didn't ask anybody to solve it for me. I'm a magician now. I know the magic. And it was a confidence level thing. I did this thing and it worked. I can try something else then and maybe that'll work. And if that doesn't work, I can figure out why it didn't work, or I can talk to somebody else who can figure it out. So I think that's the main thing that people lack, and they're not going to gain the confidence until they try some things, until they take some risks and go, okay, look, I'm going to do this. And I think that if you could get people into a classroom environment or something, and look, here's a problem, let's figure it out. I think that would be such a big step for people. I have no way of implementing that, but that's the conclusion that I came to through all of this, is that was the turning point for me, was trying something on my own and having it pay off, which was cool. Really, the last thing that I have for you, I have a couple of jokes, because I do the comedy things. So they're not good jokes, but they're jokes. And they're Plone jokes, so you know. Okay, here's one. How many developers does it take to screw in a light bulb? It takes 3. 1 developer to create a light bulb product that fits in the socket, another developer to develop a light bulb product which fits in the socket, a 3rd developer to develop another light bulb product which fits in the same socket, and then all of them can fight over which one is going to go into light fixture 5.0. This is another joke. What's the difference between Plone and Drupal? My girlfriend didn't dump me for talking about Drupal too much. And there's another joke, which I'm not going to tell because there's a code of conduct that I don't fully understand. So I'm going to say, if you want another joke, you can talk to me personally, and I'll tell you the other joke off the record. But other than that, that's basically all I have to say. Any questions? I think that should be good now. It went green.
No, maybe it's not. But
there we go.
Okay. So maybe 2 questions.
Sure.
Do you find it? I guess from what I'm hearing from you, you're finding it fun now. Is
Yes.
that true?
Yeah. Yeah. This thing. Yes, I am.
Okay. And another thing is, maybe it's my own story about when I try to present what I'm doing is I'm trying to essentially get the non-tech people to buy into the concept using technology to enable better collaboration.
Yes.
And even that concept seems to be quite strange to a lot of folks. So they are just getting used to maybe sending email, some of them. And everything they do have always been, I'll send you email, and then that type of thing.
Yes.
And what I've done is I joined the boards, I joined a couple of boards. So I then I told them, okay, instead of sending email, why don't you use a website? Oh boy, was it a lot of pushback.
Yes.
And then what I found is if I can get at least one other person than me start using it, then that person becomes my evangelist,
Sure.
So I couldn't be the one as a developer to really do that. So I guess I just kind of tell you my story. I don't know if that relates to anything that anybody else, that.
And I see that a lot because I'm working in departments who are non-technical people, and it's hard if nobody really wants to change. It's hard to make that change happen. If they're all just looking at me to do everything for them, it's not going to work out. But once I can get one or two of them to start using the tools, and they start to do things in a different way, then it starts to really take off, I think.
And if they can tell people,
Yes.
that, guess what I've done, then really now becomes, there's some momentum there.
Sure. Thank you.
So my first question is, do you have a girlfriend?
No, she dumped me for, no.
The thing that's interesting, Luke, is that you say that you figured out that you can take a risk and then try something and then get something, a positive feeling out of it. But I knew when I first met you that you had that in you. And
Sure.
so it's always been there. That I knew it. And that's why I thought you would make a really good person to join the team. And so really, you didn't discover it in this. You had it. I guess that wasn't really a question.
Well, and I think that with that, I think that everyone has that in them, right? That if they do something cool, right, on their own, even if it's not, if they like take some HTML and make a paragraph, right, and then make another paragraph, I think that if people will do that, that's cool. And it's like, I now understand this computer thing. I don't think it's just me. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm just weird.
I don't know what happens to people when they're young, but there's some people who are willing to take chances and just try things, and they're not afraid. And there is a class of people who have somehow unlearned that exploratory nature that
Sure.
I think all people probably are born with. Your talk reminds me of a book called Improvisation in Life and Art. And so the things that you've talked about in improv do apply in so many ways. And the ability to take risks and to have fun with things, that's probably the thing that we all have, that we all are willing to put ourselves out there and know that we're comfortable not knowing everything, because I certainly don't.
Sure. Thanks, Kim.
There's a real interesting TED Talk on creating movements. And it's kind of what you were talking about reminded me of it, but it's where the speaker was showing a video of some guy just dancing with his shirt off all by himself at this concert outside. He just being a complete nut. And after a little while, somebody comes up and also starts to, do stupid dancing. And then after a little while, like within 3 minutes, there was a horde, 50 people were all dancing like nuts. And so his one of his lines that he has is that the difference between a leader and just some idiot dancing by himself with his shirt off is that he convinces someone else to follow him.
Sure.
And really, it's that second person that comes in that creates the movement. The first guy gets the credit, but the second guy that really creates the impetus and makes people, and I think what you're talking about in a way is fear. And it sort of breaks down that fear. Well, if everybody's doing it, I can be an idiot, and we all be idiots together.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. That's cool. I'll start a stupid dance then later tonight.
When you first started this journey, was your mindset more of, is there a fear of something? Is there a fear of being stupid, that you did something, it didn't work? What exactly is the fear, per se?
I think
when
that
you deal with technology.
There's a certain fear that, I don't know, I think that there's something that I'm going to mess something up, right? I'm going to do something and it's going to ruin everything and I'm going to look like an idiot for having done this. And I think that, at least for me, there's also a fear in that I can't figure something out, right? In that maybe I'm just not going to be able to understand any of this because I can't for some reason. And I think maybe a lot of people have that I can't understand technology. It's not in me. I'm not a technology person. I can't do it. And I think that there's a certain amount of fear in that because that's the way we talk about it. We're like, technology person, non-technology person, right? And it seems to run in families. It's like this family, they all don't do technology things. This family all does. And I think that it's just an idea that people get. And that's what happens.
Yeah, except in your family, they are very technological.
Yes, so maybe it's just I got the good genes.
Your talk today makes me think that you don't need to have a standard career in entertainment. You could actually blend entertainment with your ability to teach people to do this kind of thing in front of kids and students.
So
And
like
you could
dress as a clown and do Plone.
You could
Plone
be that
clown.
monkey.
To the symposium? No, I kind of came to the talk, hoping. Oh, to see Marshall. There's not going to be Marshall. If you can leave if you wanted to see Marshall. We hate that guy.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you still working on campus?
Yes, for another 4. No, I'll be here for 4 weeks. I'm only working here for another week.
Oh.
So.
Okay. Because you said that you couldn't make the talks happen, so I was wondering if you're still on campus, you could probably make that happen, like to go and to talk about different issues that you've come across. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I'm a non-techie.
Oh.
working in Plone.
Okay.
I
Well,
feel like this is like AA here.
well, I'm here. I'm happy to talk to anybody about things, but I'm not here much longer.
So I just wanted to say thank you, because your talk is one I actually understood every single word and every concept of all 3 of the Plone symposiums that I've been to in the past 3 years. So thank you. And I kind of wanted to add on to answer to your question when he was talking about the fear thing, is that nobody wants to be made to feel stupid, right? So if you're not a techie person, then having that people giving you that space to make mistakes and push that button without saying, "You idiot, why'd you push that button? Why didn't you read the documentation?" It's like, I did read the documentation. I didn't freaking understand it.
Yeah.
Then that helps people kind of gain that confidence and not feel like, okay, I don't belong to this group, and then keep removing themselves out of it. So, and I've been very fortunate that I have people that I can call on who, like Luke has been, for Kim, that when I do that, I'm like, can I push this button? Is this going to blow things up? And they're like, oh, just go ahead and try it. Or, they give me that space to do that. So I would say there's a piece of advice is just really to kind of boost people up and give them the confidence, and don't berate them for expectations of what you should know that they probably don't know.
Yeah, and I think that for whatever reason, there's a big divide between the programmers and the non-programmers. And I know that there's steps being made in kids' education, from my understanding, that teaching everybody some computer programming and doing things to help them understand. So hopefully, in the future, there'll be less of that divide.
I sometimes, and I'm not a technical guy, I don't think anyway, but I sometimes think that it is often about technical people not having really good communication skills. and not really being able to relate that well to other people. I was in this leadership class which was talking about how to be a leader, and some of the most interesting things happened that I observed that I didn't think were necessary, that absolutely are. They actually took people out into the hallway and taught them how to introduce themselves to other people. And these were people in a technical field.
Yeah.
This is how you talk to other human beings. And a lot of those people, they had to get comments. And it was awful. We had to get comments back from other people about what other people thought about us. And a lot of the people revealed, people say that I don't listen, that I talk incessantly. And so there was lots of things to be gleaned from that sort of leadership thing. And I think a lot of that communication skill, that idea of being locked in a closet, just put the programmer in a closet and give him some music and feed him occasionally, and you'll have things that work out. But it also contributes to that sort of inability to actually be able to make what's the word I'm looking for? That interaction, that intimate relationship with somebody else who doesn't know about computers and technology. Although the other thing I did want to mention, Dave Chappelle has a really interesting story about when he went to his very first comedy act, where he had like a really large audience. I don't remember the theater that he was in. He had this really large audience, and he went up and he started to speak. And his mom, of course, invited. His entire family was there. And he starts getting booed. And he's standing up there while everyone around him is booing him, except for his friends and family are looking around like, what's going on? And he says, you know what? I'm getting booed. All my friends and family are here. This isn't that bad. It's okay. This isn't that bad. And said after that he was fearless, which was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
You did some things up here that I thought were wonderful. You told jokes that absolutely could have bombed, and probably did.
Some of them did.
But it didn't bother you. It didn't bother you. You just kept going on, and that was great.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that it would be super cool to get more like Plone people doing some improv or something. And if I can do this thing, then you guys can come and do the thing that I do too. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Luke, every day is improv with Plone. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So, I guess thank you all for listening to me.